Hello and welcome to Microsoft 365 Cyber Resilience, 3 Keys to Success. Today's webinar is sponsored by Veeam and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech and I am excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that are going to help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. So not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues, but if that doesn't work, just let us know there in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we are offering a lot of resources today. I'd especially like to call your attention to 4 great resources from Veeam. First, there's a PDF on Veeam Data Cloud for Microsoft 365. Then there are links to an ebook on 10 steps to Microsoft 365 Cyber Resilience, a report on 7 critical reasons for Microsoft 365 backup, and an ebook on 8 benefits of a backup service for Microsoft 365. So pick your favorite number or numbers there and download your resource. One thing I'd like to point out when we've got a lot of great resources like this is that I'd recommend clicking on one resource at a time. Sometimes on our platform, if you try clicking on, say, all 4 of these in quick succession, you'll find that you've got an error message, which can be tragic if you don't discover it until after the event is over and you can't click on the download again. So we don't want you to miss any of those. So just if you click one at a time, it tends to go better. You can access those resources throughout the presentation and feel free to share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, third, at the end of this webinar event, we'll be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section as well. Just scroll down to the bottom and you'll find the link with the details there. Now, finally, one of the best benefits of this event is that opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. So to help encourage those questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. After the event is over, the ATM team will look at all the questions that came in, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. Okay, with that housekeeping out of the way, let's get to today's fantastic session. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We're welcoming back Edward Watson, Principal Product Manager at Veeam. Always great to have Edward with us. And a new face from Veeam, Javier Perez, who's Senior Director of Product Marketing for Security at Veeam. So I'm going to turn things over to Edward to get us started.
Hello, welcome to Microsoft 365 Cyber Resilience, 3 Keys to Success. My name is Edward Watson. I am a Product Marketing Manager at Veeam, and it's my great pleasure to be joined today by Javier Perez. He is our resident security expert, and we've got a really great conversation set up for today. And Javier, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Edward. Happy to be here. This is my very first webinar with Veeam. I've done a ton of webinars in my career. This is the first one with Veeam, so happy to be here.
First of many, I'm sure. So first off, I think with this topic of cyber resilience and with security top of mind, Javier, I think it is worth us kind of diving into the major trend that we're seeing. And of course, it's that R word we always hear about, right? And 75% of organizations have suffered at least one ransomware attack. But why don't you kind of walk us through what some of these other substats mean to you? The 9676, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, pretty amazing numbers, right? So the first thing is to share with the audience that we do every year a big survey, and then we prepare a report, what we call the Ransomware Trends Report every year here at Veeam. In fact, we are getting ready for the next one. This week, actually, I've been working on the survey. We're discussing it, getting it together, and we'll have some very interesting results early next year. The 75% of organizations suffering a ransomware attack, This is from a survey of over 1,000 organizations. That's pretty impressive, right? And of course, you are going to say, the audience is going to say, well, I heard about this in the news. I heard about this one. It's a small percentage, the one that makes the news, right? Obviously, no one wants to be on the news. And I usually, it just reminded me when I was a sales engineer and talk about security products with customers, one of my questions was, you don't want to be in the news, right? As the next breach, the next ransomware attack. So 75% it's real, it's realistic. Now the 96% is interesting. Specifically talking about ransomware, everyone, I think for most people know, ransomware refers to the encryption of your data, right? And then asking for a ransom to be able to decrypt that data and have access to that data or the systems and the operation of your organization. So the threat actors figure out really quickly that, a solution to your encryption is, well, I recover from my backups, right? So now they go and target also backup repositories, right? Try to get access. Many times, for the most part, your systems are compromised. The moment they get in, then they don't attack immediately. They start moving in lateral movements or horizontally to find where can they access, right? What other data they can access, what other systems they can access. And as they move horizontally or lateral movement, they're going to go and find those backup servers or repositories. So they're going to try to encrypt that. So that's the 96%, which is pretty amazing. And then, one thing is to attack it, and another thing is to basically compromise it and start doing some encryption. The 63% it's also very interesting. That's a little bit different conversation. That's the, it's security, but security teams are small teams typically, right? And then they're outnumbered by the number of engineers and the number of IT operations. So it's important to have IT operations closer to the security teams, and that's what we talk about and when we ask the question. And obviously, everyone responds as we should have a significant improvement on that. So good numbers, and we can talk for hours about more statistics.
Absolutely.
Like this.
Absolutely. So it seems to me that it's not enough to have just a backup, because we know that ransomware, they're going after the backups. It's not enough to have the backup itself. We need to have the right security mechanisms in place. And I think that's a really great starter for the conversation today. But before we get into that, there are other reasons, right? So I think aside from the R word, aside from ransomware, there are other reasons as to why organizations want to protect Microsoft 365 data. When you're looking at some of these stats and some of these reasons, Javier, what comes to mind? Is anything missing, for instance, or what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so you can see in the small number there on the slide on the percentages, they are very, very close, which means when you're asking organizations, when you're asking the different respondents, they tend to select all of the above, right? Or most of the reasons. So a lot of those are good reasons to protect your M365. The one that it's not there, it's cloud outages. Now, cloud outages, there are some cases where full region goes down, but that also means specific cloud resources that could go down, and maybe you have access to just part of your data or not, right? So definitely that's the other one that I will add to the list here. And then obviously we have to highlight that this survey was done. This is a different software survey. This was the data protection. This was done before the CrowdStrike outage, right? The Microsoft and Windows and CrowdStrike. Yeah. I think immediately after that outage, people are saying, well, that's another good reason to have your backup.
Very good reason. Very good reason. Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into these 3 keys to success. And we've actually broken these out into 3 major themes. So we've got the data security, and what we'll be covering in this is a lot of the built-in security types, right? So, a lot of times we think of MFA, we kind of hear of our employees maybe complaining about having to do the extra step sign in and leveraging something that they have on them enable secure access that's not duplicated. But is this a silver bullet from your perspective, Javier, or is this just the beginning of our kind of exploration of access security here?
So my take is that it's almost not quite there, but it's almost a silver bullet, or it's the closest thing that we have for silver bullet, right? You mentioned that people complain about this. Of course, like nobody likes to go and check on the app, check on your authenticator, or wait for or get the text message and do the multi-factor authentication. I think some of the direction, and I've seen in the industry moving on the direction of more the use of biometrics, right? So you don't have to go and type your password every time or get the PIN. But yes, MFA, it helps. It definitely helps. The other thing I want to comment here is, and I highly recommend everyone to sign up on those monitoring service, monitoring your data or your contact details, right? I get notifications of, your email or one of your emails is now appear on this latest leak in the dark net, right? The dark web. And if our emails or if our personal data it's out there, the one thing that we can do is to change our passwords constantly and make sure that you're using multi-factor authentication. So even if they have your credentials, they're not going to have your next step, right? So going back to your question, Edward, I think that's the closest thing. We also know from the ransomware incident response business at Veeam, what we call the COFWare by Veeam. We know that organizations that enforce multi-factor authentication and that there's less likely to be to suffer in a ransomware attack, right?
Yeah, and there's so many ways to enable it too. There's if you want the security defaults, sure. If you want conditional access policies, great. You're going to have to decide how you want to implement it per your organization. And as part of a backup strategy too, there's exceptional benefit in having this built into our solutions. Obviously, with Veeam, we have MFA as default built into our solutions, and ways that you can extend MFA through role-based access control as well. So obviously, it's very important to ensure vendors that we work with have these as part of their strategies as well. But MFA, excellent technology. Encryption is another one that we hear a lot about. And of course, M365 does allow that only the authorized parties have the access to the decryption keys to access the original information. They use technologies such as BitLocker for files, TLS for files in transit, Microsoft Purview for Exchange, Teams messages as well. So there's clearly a lot of different encryption built into M365. But Javier, what's your opinion on the importance of encryption in relation to things like backup data and encrypting data in transit, at rest? What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, would point there that about making sure that you always encrypt your data. Make sure that you're encrypted in transit, at rest. If you can also encrypt in use, that's obviously some advanced technologies there, but definitely the recommendation. Just as like we were just talking about, just like we were talking about MFA, encryption it's a must-have. There are different ways to do it. You just listed there. You can see there on the slide a few options. You have to do it, and you have the control for that. And by the way, the other thing to highlight is no longer, if I do that, it's going to be so much slower, or it's going to take so much time to decrypt. And no, I mean, the technologies have advanced, and it's basically automated, right? So automatically you are encrypting. Automatically you can, when you recover, you are doing the decryption. So no longer really a major overhead.
Absolutely. Now, the next topic I know is very near and dear to our hearts here. Zero trust. Obviously, this has become a big buzzword in the industry, But is there a reason behind the hype? Javier, from your perspective, should every organization, well, first let's walk through the principles, but what exactly, should organizations be focused on around zero trust? Is this as important as a topic as it maybe should be or warranted to be?
Yeah, I mean, some companies or maybe some marketing teams have abused the term zero trust, right? And
Sure.
that happens when something starts to resonate and organizations, enterprises, uh, follow, right? So
Right.
just like what happened with cloud, everyone jumping into the cloud. Now AI, everyone talking about AI. Zero
Yeah.
trust was some a different level, but when we talk about security, that's when many of the security oriented products and organizations, they've been focusing on that. Now, aside from the the buzzword and the over marketing, I think the principles are important, and we're just
Hmm.
listing here the three. There are definitely more.
Yeah.
I like just to highlight a couple of things. So, right, I like
Hmm.
the use least privilege access, right?
Hmm.
And many
Yeah.
of us have experienced that, right? Where we have now access to, or we want to go and access a specific file or report document, and we can edit it or we can read it, and that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Because going back to, if you are compromised, if your credentials, if your access is compromised, well, you also have limited access, right? So
Right.
not everyone has to have access to everything. And of course, if you need to, you can request it, justify it, and get the additional privileges on your access. So it just makes sense. Yes, a little bit
Yeah.
of a hassle there to be asking for access and all that, but it's definitely a good practice. The other one I want to highlight is the assume bridge, and
Hmm.
that's related, right? So
Right.
that's when we're going to talk about later about the immutable backups and backups, but it's let's plan thinking that what's going to happen when we're bridged, right? And
Right.
there are you can do your testing, you can do your replication, you can do your what is known as tabletop exercises when you're simulating a bridge. That's also really helpful on your principles. And the final thing I want to say here, I mean, we can talk for a long time about
Sure.
zero trust principles. Well, the granular access list, you know, split everything, have the all your environments on different places, or be able to kind of granularly separate things, also part of the principles. But the last thing I want to cover here quickly is um, not only on your environments and your applications the use of zero trust principles. Ask your vendors, ask your
Mm.
third-party software or solutions to have zero trust principles, right? That
Right.
that should be part of your request, and that all it's going to do is obviously improve your security posture.
Yeah, I love that suggestion. Is actually inquire how your backup vendors are meeting these principles as part of their solution. I love that. That's a great suggestion. Okay, so some other great mentions that we have to mention if we're talking about built-in security. And what I like about this specific diagram, Javier, is we can actually see how, a lot of these capabilities are either are not addressed, are somewhat addressed, or fully addressed, depending what license type you utilize. In this case, the enterprise licenses. But obviously, there's things like versioning, allowing the user to hold on to different versions and really control their own ability to restore at their level. There's the data loss prevention capabilities, which we mentioned in some form,
Yeah.
preventing exporting the data. Conditional access, obviously meeting that kind of helps meet the zero trust principles that we mentioned as well, is kind of keeping those the access nice and simple and secure, and then even proactive threat detections. But I'm curious, of all of these, do any of these replace having a backup? All the things we've mentioned so far, how does having a backup actually complement these technologies? Because I don't believe that any of the technologies that we've covered thus far necessarily take the place of backup, What is backups place within all of this from your
Well,
perspective?
just to be clear, absolutely no replacement, no
Okay.
replacement.
Okay.
So everyone should be doing the backups, right? No, I mean the thing here with security at all levels, it's about layers of security, and this is
Hmm.
described in different ways at all levels, right?
Right.
Just reminded me a conversation on one of the conferences talking about just Linux, right? Linux operating system, which basically hosts all our cloud environments nowadays. And Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux, when they were asking him, how you keep adding security features to the Linux kernel, and the answer was exactly the same. He says, yes, because security is always about layers, right? The more layers
Right.
of security that we can have, the better. And that's just talking about the kernel of Linux. When we talk about cloud environments and we talk about SaaS environments and of course M365, the more layers we have, the better, more protection. And there's, a variety of products out there that help us with, follow zero trust principles, follow secure by design principles. That's a
Right.
different that's a different webinar. We'll do it next
Sure.
time. Secure
Right.
by
Right.
design, and then the different tooling to be well, and then the two categories, right? The defensive tools, defensive measure,
Hmm.
proactive, or be yeah, prepare for a potential attack, and then the reactive, the tools that are going to help you when you are at that situation, including obviously the recovery, right? So
Right.
yes, multi-layer, absolutely no way to replace your backups. Keep doing it, and obviously we have recommendations of how to do it and how to do it better, right? And in terms of
Absolutely.
your data protection, yeah.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit, let's switch gears. Let's talk a little bit about risk planning and the actual response of this. So when it comes to incident response planning, there's obviously a variety of different criteria you could pick from and add to your plan. There's considerations like, are you handling this by yourself? Are you leveraging an outside vendor who has expertise with handling and responding to incidents? Identifying those critical assets within your environment, making sure those are protected, those are backed up. Of course, defining what the possible threats could be and making sure that you anticipate them. Aligning with stakeholders, maybe one department or a few different departments, or you're going to back up, multiple times a day, maybe every hour if it's the C-suite operations or some other critical legal department, for instance. Maybe some lesser departments you're backing up only once a day. So being aligned with your stakeholders on those expectations, and then
My
of course building the strategies. Yes, Javier.
No, I was just gonna say my PowerPoint presentations can wait. You don't have to back up everything with my
Okay.
PowerPoint.
But kind of building this out and getting to the ultimate sort of evaluation and testing at the conclusion there, you know, what from your perspective is there well, let me ask you this, Javier. Is there a perfect incident response plan, or is every organization going to be different? What are the most important aspects from your perspective?
Yeah, well, you just gave me an idea for another webinar to talk about incident response, right?
Absolutely.
In fact, I'm actually working right now on a session where I talk about exactly this, and the title is something around following security blueprints, and it's that, right? There are plenty of resources out there that talk about readiness and then the
Hmm.
actual incident response, like at the time of the being attacked, having a ransomware attack, a cyber attack. So readiness and then the actual incident response. There's plenty of documentation out there, good documentation. Most
Hmm.
countries now have a cybersecurity agency, right? So here in the US,
Hmm.
we have
Yep.
CISA. In the UK, we also have a very strong organization there in many countries, right? And all of them
Hmm.
provide good guidance, good frameworks, step by step. And these are what you just listed there. Obviously, good tips, good
Sure.
things to cover. Yes, I have to recommend to go to the professionals, get help
Yep.
from the best, get help from experts that in readiness as well as when it happens, and make sure you have all your, especially we're talking about that here, enterprise grade solutions, right? That in your case here, in the case that we're talking about here specifically to Microsoft 365, that integrate well with the environment, that are designed, or they're made specifically for this type of ecosystems, this type of environments. So many different ways to do it. There's plenty of documentation, and then get some of the experience from the experts. Definitely, that will be my advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting when I was first reading up on Coveware and what we offer, and how we are able to help address during incidents. It's great that a lot of companies can now rely not just on helping recover the data, but also rely on Veeam to actually communicate with the criminals directly. They don't have to be a part of the stress and a part of the having to engage with the ransomware attackers. They can let Veeam be the face to handle the entire situation. So I think to me, when I heard that, it was actually, I can see how companies would have value in that.
Even the Bitcoin payments.
Yeah, right, right.
No. First of all, let me clarify.
Yeah.
We do not recommend to pay ransoms. We do not.
No.
Absolutely not. But there are cases where you just have to do it, right? And depending on the industry, there are some very serious cases where even lives are depending on access to the digital infrastructure. So there are situations where you end paying the ransomware, and typically the payments are based on Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. A lot of very interesting information there. And by the way, absolutely. Talking about ransomware cases is regardless of the environment, right? So here M365, yes, definitely your data can be encrypted, and going back to the layers of security, there's always the stolen passwords or the figuring out the password, brute force attacks, or phishing attacks, and despite all the layers of security, you end being compromised. Right?
Absolutely. And speaking of preparation, regular audits, having that systematic review of various aspects of M365, of your backup environment, conducting penetration testing, making sure that you can evaluate the effectiveness of security measures. How often do you think organizations are doing this? From your experience in the market and speaking with customers and organizations, are they, is there a routine here where they're doing this often? Is there a process in place? How does this typically work? And are we doing it enough, I guess, is the larger question for organizations.
Yeah, this is here we're talking about more of it's a one-to-one exercise here. We're talking about professionals coming and doing penetration testing or going through a full audit, right? So obviously this cannot be automated. This cannot be done like that often. Typically every quarter, every 6 months, recommended to do an internal security audit and a penetration testing, and recommended also to be part of some of the other external regulatory compliance, right? And follow some of those recommendations. That typically is once a year, where you have to go through your audit and being certified. The other thing to highlight here is on penetration testing is not just different tools trying to get in. There's also the social engineering component, which is always very interesting, right? How many scams are out there, right? So that's another piece.
Right.
There are scams every day. For the audience, be careful with that, right? Don't Don't
Yeah.
reply to text messages that you don't know the
Right.
numbers, right? Or
Yeah.
don't. I mean, most people I know it's like they don't answer the phone if the number
No.
is not something. There's a number that you don't know, right?
Right.
There are
Right.
scams everywhere. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I heard this kind of phrase that, our employees really are becoming our second firewall, where ultimately they are the one of the defensive mechanisms that we can utilize because they are targeted, and we need to make sure that they're educated and that they're ready and that they can really tell when something is not quite right. Because I know that there was that very large attack, which I believe happened maybe in Las Vegas, perhaps, which ended up just because I think it was the cause of it was only a 15-minute phone call. By a simple research of some LinkedIn employees and a quick phone call, managed to get all the privileged information. And unfortunately for that company, that ended up with some pretty significant consequences there. So yes, absolutely right. I mean, we have to make sure our employees are prepared and ready. Okay, monitoring and logging. So, I mean, this seems like almost a pretty obvious one, Javier. But it's important for the service itself. But what when it comes to backups, is it important for our data protection to have the ability to monitor our environment to see what's going on? What value do you see just in monitoring and the ability to detect, monitor and detect?
Right. No, I mean, when you are doing the research, preventive or and after the fact as well, where do you go? You got to go and look at your log files. You go
Hmm.
and check your basically you're doing your internal audits, looking at your logs, where you can find, if things like users like from users that are not new users or suspicious is the word, suspicious users, activity around transferring data, right? We're talking
Right.
about cyber attacks here. Another very common attack, which is actually in many cases easier for the threat actors, is just the
Hmm.
exfiltration of data,
Sure.
meaning stealing the data as opposed to going through the hassle of encrypting and getting their tools in so they can encrypt and all that. They
Hmm.
just transfer. Now, how do you identify if your data was exfiltrated? Well, you have to go to your monitoring and your logging and see if data was transferred. Now, the other component here is the monitoring, which is ideally you want to integrate that with other tooling, kind of security monitoring tooling, so you can send your data, your log files, your auditing, and then be able to create some level of alarms, thresholds for those alarms, levels of risks, right? Which ones would you consider high severity versus low severity, things like that. So integrated into other security solutions, security monitoring solutions. That's ideal, but even if you don't have that much integrated, make sure that you can always go back to your records and see what happens. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, built-in capabilities Microsoft has work really great for addressing and monitoring those real-time anomalies. Backup side, obviously it's the same thing. We want to make sure no one's messing with our backup, no one's, making any changes to our backups or, our protected data, because ultimately that's the data that's going to put us back and reduce that downtime.
Any
Okay.
suspicious user, any suspicious activity with your backups, right? You want to detect if
Yes,
there's any changes, any updates, any deletions. that's that's something that you want
absolutely.
to take a look.
Absolutely. Now let's do a double click into backup security best practices, because obviously regular backups, I think that's pretty obvious, but there's something to that, Javier. Do you find that most companies have an idea of how often they should be backing up? What are some of the deciding factors when it comes to what we consider regular backups? I mean, I do find that a lot of organizations still aren't sure, should I be backing up as often as I can? What are some of the pros and cons of that? Obviously financial and other. But what are your general thoughts on this as a topic, Javier?
Well, I'm going to give you the recipe. I'm going to give you a prescriptive
Okay.
solution for your
Okay.
question. No, there's no such thing.
Yeah.
It's always depends, right? It
Right,
always
right.
depends. Obviously, you want to when we talk about I think was one of the points in an earlier slide when we're talking about the incident planning. You have to identify your key data, right?
Right.
Data. When I say data, not just databases, but also your applications, all your digital infrastructure. Which one is critical to you? Which one, if
Hmm.
it goes down, either cybersecurity attack or an outage,
Hmm.
that it's going to affect the most your organization. That's what the
Right,
one that you want to make sure that you can recover quickly, right?
right,
Um, my PowerPoint slide decks that can wait, right? That can be recreated, right?
right,
Although I
right.
make sure that I have a backup on my hard drive as opposed to just everything on the cloud, right? But yeah, I mean, it all depends. Again, the highlight here is just make sure you have a good schedule of making sure you backup. And then the other very important piece here is test your recoveries,
Hmm.
have some sandboxes or some areas where you can test your backups, test your recovery.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the audience must be going, okay, when are you going to mention immutability? And yes, of course, you need to make sure with your regular backups, make them immutable, right? But I think there's some debate here, at least for myself. Is it a true nice to have, or is immutability becoming mandatory, Javier? If you can make backup data immutable, should you make backup data immutable? Is it a no-brainer from your standpoint?
Well, first of all, you have to have the tools, right? You make sure, obviously we have here a good functionality from Veeam, but you have to have the tools to do it. Yes, some probably people my age and older will think on tapes, right? Well, that's still
Yeah.
around, by the way. That's still a
Oh
way
yeah.
to that's still a
Oh yeah.
way to
Tape is
back
not
up.
dead. Tape is not dead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're still around. So yes, think about this as um, you know you want to protect your data. You want your
Hmm.
data to be protected in a way that no one can alter or tamper your your data, right?
Yeah.
And there are different ways to do it. Now in cloud environments, we also talk about air gapping that and be able to kind of really quickly deploy in some other VMs or on some other environments. So yes, make sure. I mean, it's definitely helpful to look for immutable backups, be able to have them. Going back to the previous recommendation, make sure that you test, right, and so
Yeah.
you know that you have good, clean backups.
Absolutely. Things like governance mode being the ability to actually override some of the lock settings for a very, privileged admin. That almost, in some ways, some might think that almost goes against the principles of immutability, and that no one's supposed to be able to lock this or keep, or no one's supposed to be able to change this once it has been set. But there are circumstances where this may need to be overridden, and having that flexibility to do so, even for immutable data, I think that is still beneficial to some extent, for sure. There are cases, I believe, where even the immutable needs to somehow be changeable by privileged admins. Separation of data and privileges. So, at Veeam, we created the 32110 rule, which Javier, you had briefly mentioned in passing. But yeah, having 3 copies of data, 2 different media types, one offsite, one air gapped with 0 errors. This is widely regarded as the best practice for backup. But separation of data, what do you think really is the key to understanding, why this is so important to have that data separation, Javier? What are your thoughts on separation of data?
Yeah, I mean, this is it covers not just backups, right? But it covers
Hmm.
your infrastructure, because you want to be able to move from one environment to another really quickly,
Hmm.
right? And you can
Absolutely.
go from like regional Azure deployments in one region versus another region or a different country. Maybe
Right.
have one in Europe or more in Europe and others over here or in any other country. So just practically in terms of the um, availability of your production environments, just makes sense to
Yeah.
have that diversity. And of course that works as well with backing up and by the way also the next thing, which is the storage, right? And have the
Right.
the storage in different virtual environments, in different clouds or on-premise. Have your hybrid environments. That was another buzzword a
Yep.
while ago, right? The whole hybrid
Right.
environment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Your cloud and on-premise, or your public cloud, or your private cloud and on-premise,
Right.
or a mix of them, which is the hybrid
Right.
environments.
Right. So we've talked a lot about all the different mechanisms. We've talked also about how backup cannot be replaced. Veeam Data Cloud for Microsoft 365, that's what we're going to be focusing on. And this is our backup service for those of you that weren't aware. This is based on a solution that has over 22 million users protected in market, more than any backup vendor that I'm aware of. Um, Uses a very modern, secure, and intuitive UI that I'm going to show very shortly. And the last thing is everything is included. And I'm not sure about you, Javier, but when I hear everything is included, I think, really? Everything's included? And yes, it is true. Everything is actually included. So that includes on the backup vendor side, what we manage as Veeam. We manage everything from the servers to the proxies. We offer unlimited storage. We handle all the updates, all the patches, all the network and security aspects, all the maintenance, infrastructure, all of the items that seem very cumbersome to manage and oftentimes distract us from what we're actually doing in our day-to-day operations. So instead of spending time managing infrastructure, we can actually focus on the right panel there, which is all about controlling our backups, making sure that we have access to our backups, powerful search capabilities, and restoration really at our fingertips. So you have also additional configuration options to really put you in the driver's seat when it comes to customization. We offer very long retention periods. You can store the data in the region of your choice. You can diversify your storage repos. You can also generate reports. You can manage licenses directly. And as well as role-based access. So there's lots of different, not only backup operations, but also security built in, as well as analytics to kind of keep you in control of your backup environment. But what I'm excited to go into shortly is some of the
Well,
really cool capabilities. And yes, please, Javier.
no, I was just gonna say when you're there, I can comment. The only thing I will add is that everything that you just mentioned, Edward,
Yeah.
you articulated really well, is that we're managing that infrastructure. That infrastructure, it's been managed and designed and developed with zero trust principles and with secure by design principles. So that's the other thing to highlight, that it's part of all that managed infrastructure.
Absolutely. It really this visual really is almost the best possible punchline for a lot of what we've discussed in terms of security. You're absolutely right. But in addition to sort of the responsibility of you versus us and us Veeam, we also get an intuitive point and click UI. It means really, even if you have newer employees coming on board, or maybe some junior or even non-experienced IT folk, it really offers a very low bar to entry in terms of knowledge. So you can quickly have those newer employees get up and running with little to no. You no longer have to be a backup expert. You can simply and I say that with some precaution.
How about you show us, Edward? How about you show us?
Okay. Why don't we just go right into it? I'll just show you how easy it is instead of talking about it. That's a wonderful idea, Javier. So
sorry to cut you off, but you got me excited.
No, absolutely. it is worth. No, absolutely. Let's get to the good stuff, guys. So now, just a quick caveat. This is actually a clickable demo that I'm sharing today. And as such, there is a link which I will share, which also allows you to engage with this clickable demo as well. So this is not a live version of the demo, but merely a clickable demo. But let's get into this. So first, you get this really nice dashboard. You start your day at the beginning of your day, got your coffee with you, and you want to take a look at your backup environment and see exactly what's going on. And this is what it allows you to do. You can check what your backup status is, the last backup, any warnings that are happening, how many restore points you currently have available, and your storage view from month to month. So you can kind of keep an eye on how things are progressive. You can take a look at your users, how many accounts are protected, how many users need to be licensed, how many don't require a license, what does my retention look like, what does my storage consumption by user look like, are there any really high storage consumption users I need to keep an eye on. So there's lots just on this dashboard alone that really can help you start your day and know exactly what's going on if there are any anomalies going on that you need to address quickly. Now, let's quickly, now that we've started here, let's go and create a backup policy. So you can see here on the left, you've got your backup policies, but you can also double click into the specific applications you have protected. You've also got notifications, which allows you to view your alerts. If you're looking for your latest restore sessions or other activity, you can find it there, as well as settings to configure permissions and other role-based access control. And of course, you can access support directly from the UI as well. So creating a backup policy is very easy. In your policies pane, you can actually see the backup by status. Of course, you want to make sure you're in the green there. And you can obviously see if it's active and when the next backup run will be, and even the process time that it's currently at. You can go ahead and create a new backup policy to add to your backups here. And we have two backup policy types. Express policy, which, as the name implies, is a very fast backup and fast restore. And why that matters is because that's actually powered by Microsoft 365 Backup Storage, which we just integrated with, one of the very only vendors in the space to actually be offering this. And this is integrated with Microsoft's first-party solution to offer lightning fast backup and restore speeds greater than between 1 and 5 terabytes per hour. So blazing fast backup and restore speeds. On the flip side, we have our Flex policy, which is our core Veeam solution, which allows for, as the name implies there, much more customizable backups, customizable retention lengths, helping you meet any RPO, RTO, and very granular recovery options. So let's go ahead and show the Express policy. We'll go ahead and create this, and this is incredibly easy. We'll go ahead and create the policy here. And we'll go on new policy, we'll make that Express policy, and you simply name it, give it a description, and you can either choose to back up your entire organization or back up specific items, and really it's as easy as that. You have your policy created. Now to create a Flex policy, you go ahead and add the description here. By default, you get a 7-year retention period. You can extend that as long as forever. And of course, even lower via the tab here. You click next, you can select the different objects that you want within your backup. You can choose to back up either your entire organization or exclude some items from the backup or even specific objects as well. And it's as easy as that. You have some advanced options, but the restores are where you get even more options. So the Outlook restore, we'll go ahead and run this, and you type in the filter what user you want to restore. So Zimmy, we can see the inbox sent and all the different items under the mailbox. We can restore the selected mailbox. We have the option with Express to do the full restore, or with Flex, we have additional options, either to the original location or even restoring both changed or missing items. We also have other options, such as to another user's mailbox, local computer, or downloading in the background. And we can even exclude specific items from the restore as well. So we'll run that restore, and we'll go ahead and restore more. Let's look at OneDrive. So we can actually access the OneDrive of, say, Nippon here, and we can see there's all the different various data types underneath. We can restore the selected OneDrive. We'll do the Express full restore. And it's as easy as that. We can do the SharePoint Online. Let's restore a site. We've got our company site there. We've got the subsites and content underneath. We can restore the selected site. We can again do the Express full restore. So that's a very lightning fast restore. And that restore has started. Now with Teams, it works slightly different. Obviously, we can see all our different teams within our organization there. But what's different about this is Express does not support Teams today. So we run strictly our Flex restore here. We can restore the selected team that we want. We get our advanced options, as we saw, the changed, missing. But we also have additional options with Teams where we can restore actually the team settings, such as guest permissions and mentions, and even the membership and permissions as well. So a few different options with Teams, and of course we can run that restore. And with that, that is the walkthrough. So for those interested in checking out this walkthrough or using it for yourself, I will definitely post the link in the chat here. But yeah, you can see it's extremely easy to use, extremely easy to navigate. And I don't know, what do you think, Javier?
That's pretty cool. The whole clicking, you didn't code anything, right? Did you issue a command there? Nothing.
Absolutely.
Really, really flexible, easy to use.
Absolutely. And thank you for helping persuade me to get to the demo quicker. I'm sure everyone appreciates that. Okay. So some quick takeaways though. And first off, any parting thoughts from your side, Javier, before we proceed?
No, thanks for the invitation, Edward. Always happy to have a good conversation about security. There's a ton more to talk about. There's a ton of security features, security functionality to talk, and also recommendations around there, how to proactively enhance your defenses, enhancing your security posture. So happy to chat again about this and talk to our customers or prospective customers. So yeah, all good. Enjoy the conversation with you, Edward.
Excellent. Likewise. So first off, we have our 10 steps to Microsoft 365 cybersecurity. This covers a lot more than what we were able to cover today. We did cover a lot today, Javier, I thought. But I think that this actually captures maybe even more detail. Even more detail. So definitely check out this QR. And by the way, you will be receiving a personal note from yours truly post-webinar with all the slides, with all the information. If you want to get back in touch with me, I will reply. It won't be an automated system. It will be me. So feel free to reach back out if you have any questions for me. And we also would like to offer a demo, a personalized demo. So not a clickable demo, Javier. This is a actual real demo that's personalized and customized for the customer. We want you guys to reach out to us and request that demo if you would like. And lastly, we have the demo that I showed. That is the the walnut walkthrough that I just showed, and you're more than welcome to continue to use that for as many times as you wish. Now, with that, we do have a few questions. I've got one question here. We have Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 with over a year left on the license. We back up to an on-prem server. Is there an option to trade in the remaining license time on the data cloud for Microsoft 365? And yes, we do have some options for that, Scott. So please reach out to us, and if you'd like, you can definitely respond to the email that you're going to get from me, and we can get you to the right place. But that's certainly an option. If you are a Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 customer already, and you are looking at going from a software solution to our backup service, that's a transition that we anticipate our customers making. And so we do have ways to configure the license remainder to help you get to Veeam Data Cloud as well. So we'll help you find a way. We'll also assist with that deployment as well. We also have a question on what are the options that Veeam has for M365 backup. So I did mention the software just now. So we have a software version, which is the on-prem deployed version of this solution, leverages lots of different storage options and customization options, and of course the backup service. But we also have managed services as well. If you'd like to leverage an ecosystem of our managed service providers, those are partners that we work with that have the expertise to help you manage your backups, or they manage the backups and restores on your behalf and your environment. So those are great. That's a great option, from my opinion, for organizations that want to be completely hands-off for their environment. We do have, I will cover just another question here, but we don't really have too many more to cover. Let's see here. How do I back up Microsoft Teams? Okay, so protecting Microsoft Teams works in a slightly different way than many other applications. It's worth noting that with Veeam, we actually integrate directly with some of the latest the Teams export APIs that Microsoft comes up with. So we actually allow for that very granular. You saw the memberships and settings and mentions, the things that are really the granular level data restore options. So there are many vendors in the space that aren't fully integrated with a lot of those very specific Teams APIs. So you're not going to get as granular, fast restoration. So we protect not only the data itself, but the underlying components within SharePoint and Teams, etc. Okay, so with that, I think we'll go ahead and end early. I know we have a few other questions. We will reach out to you individually, but Javier, it has been a great pleasure, and I hope that our audience members have learned a thing or two about on the security front. But again, it's been a pleasure, sir, so thanks for joining.
Likewise. Thank you, Edward.
Okay, and thank you to everyone joining, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Edward and Javier, for putting together that really informative presentation and for all of your insights there in the Q&A. Really appreciate your time today. Before we wrap up, we do have one more piece of business. It's the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card today is Philip George from Kentucky. So congratulations to Philip George. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Veeam for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That's going to conclude today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.